this Friday and then next Friday. So I know it's a little different. We're hoping to have some breakout groups. We hope it works out well. I want to thank everybody that's put some time and effort into pulling this together. It was a little different for us as well. And I hope, you enjoy the conference and we have some time to really discuss in breakout sessions and through the presentations, just, what's our next pathway forward. And for those that you don't know me, I do apologize. I should have said this in the beginning. My name is Daniel Gutierrez. I'm the director of the New Mexico Main Street program. And I did want to, again, welcome everybody and hope you all enjoy the conference over the two-day conference. I do want to, introduce Dr. Matthew Wagner. He's the Vice President of Revitalization Programs at the National Main Street Center. And as we move forward, and shift priorities, I really was asked. I'm glad Matt was able to join us because I just really wanted you guys to get a perspective from Matt in terms of National Main Street Center's focus as we move forward, any priorities they have, and give an opportunity to plug the National Main Street Conference. That's Main Street Now conference that's coming up. I've seen some of the preliminary agendas and it looks really, really great. So I hope you guys are able to make it. So Matt's role at National Main Street Center is he's responsible for driving the center's field services initiatives, including developing and delivery of technical services for Main Street America and Urban Maine. He directs the Center for New Research Agenda as well as professional development programming through the Main Street America Institute. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Again, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you being here.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. And it's so good to be in New Mexico this morning, sharing some time with you guys. As Daniel mentioned, my remarks are sort of tailored to kind of looking forward. And I think with the global pandemic, certainly what we've witnessed all across the country is probably the greatest accelerator of all time, if you want to frame the pandemic in those sort of circumstances, where trend lines that were occurring pre-COVID, whether downward or upward, were just simply accelerated. And I want to talk a little bit about some categories, I guess, that we're observing and try to better understand how those are impacting and influencing the work that we do, in our downtowns and in our districts, across the country, but also obviously in New Mexico. And part of that involves a lot of habit formation that has occurred during this particular time. It takes on average about 66 days for us to develop as humans new habits, and so you can imagine in a 2-month span of time and how long COVID has been with us, how many new habits we've likely formed relative to the way that we work, the way that we shop, the way that we recreate, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to talk about some big shift areas real quickly, and then we've written quite a bit, so if you're interested in maybe seeing more on this, feel free to check out some of the blogs that we've been doing at the national office. So the first is just e-commerce, in essentially an 8-week period of time from April to May of 2020. E-commerce accelerated during that particular time in terms of market share, the same proportion that had taken them 10 years previously. So, in terms of taking market share out of the retail sector, e-commerce has, just profoundly accelerated in that particular vein. And as such, I think we all have to be cognizant of the role, even though we suspect there'll be pullback there, certainly once things begin to reopen. In April of 2020, when we did our national survey of about 6,000 small businesses, we saw that 63% did not have of small business owners, less than 20 employees, did not have an e-commerce component to their business. Now in January, after the holidays, that had fallen about 12% overall. So we made some gains, but we still have a long way to go. So you'll hear a little bit more about what we're doing on that front. In the retail sector, the media has really and appropriately, talked about, what has been the acceleration on the downturn, frankly, so much disinvestment, closure, et cetera, the pains in the small business Main Street kind of market. And that's kind of been a tale of two cities in some respects. Obviously, there have been geographic influences there, but I think what's been missing from the conversation is the sector influence there. There are some sectors of the retail economy that frankly have boomed during this particular period of time. So if you are in the recreation, business, selling bikes or kayaks or whatever, you may have had your best year ever in the history of your business. Same thing in home and garden, shed sales, backyard sheds, or those sales are up 400%. If you sell garden supplies, seeds were up 36% this year. And if you had anything to do with health, organics, something about your immune system, vitamin sales were up 55% this year, and vitamin C and vitamin D. So just a lot of sort of big shifts happening in the retail sector. And then on the flip side, obviously, if you were in the hospitality, food at home was quite different than food away. So restaurants, which in 2019 had achieved sales that actually outpaced grocery store sales for the first time in the history, and then saw that all that gain totally reversed in 2020. And so I think it's just important to better understand, again, our own local economies. And while there are national trends happening, they may not all influence you to the same extent as other areas. Some other, what I think are really like opportunities in a time that, again, where we've seen just great pains in the marketplace, is in the area of entrepreneurship. And so you'll probably notice from the national office, our work in ecosystem building and really trying to understand the role of place in supporting both nascent entrepreneurs, but all the way through the life cycle of small businesses in terms of retention activities to even the exit at some point. Entrepreneurship has always been sort of running parallel to actually downturns in the economy, and we saw that in the Great Recession. So as we look in the pandemic, where we had at one point 20 million filing unemployment, and still anywhere between 9 and 10 where we haven't pulled back that, we're seeing tremendous growth in the area of entrepreneurship rates of filing. So from Q2 to Q3 of 2020, we saw a 77% increase in the number of business filings at the federal level, both in terms of what they call sort of high intensity kinds of businesses that might be employing some folks, to solopreneurs, people that are transitioning sort of side hustles into new businesses or e-commerce kinds of businesses, what have you. In our latest research report, and I just wrote a blog about this I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, is that, as you're thinking about your economic vitality activities, 70% of the businesses that you probably see on your downtown streets come from within. And so as we think about where we place resources and our capacity in the economic vitality, and we're sort of weighing business recruitment versus entrepreneurship, ecosystem building, or cultivating from within, the return on investment is so much greater when you turn inwards and look at cultivating the talent that you have right in your own backyard. And so that generally, from a retail perspective, that ranges anywhere between 70 and 75% of those businesses will be found right in your own backyard. So I think that's another sort of big transition point. Also, obviously, there's been a lot of conversations around remote work, and we've probably seen the biggest migrations since the great northern migration of African Americans back in the 60s and 1970s. We're moving a lot more than ever before as we become decoupled in many respects from our places of work. And that's led to lots of different kinds of opportunities in rural America, but it also has presented some challenges, and we recognize there are barriers there, from technology infrastructure to perhaps sort of urban amenities that you find maybe in small communities. But probably the biggest one has been in the housing area. And, just trying to find either housing, or on the flip side, driving up housing prices, which cause constraints and issues in our small towns. And so lots of different things to consider there. And then when we think about downtowns and remote work, opportunities around co-working spaces, or supporting downtown housing development as a benefit there. And then finally, I just want to hit on probably I guess a big fifth shift that we're seeing is really in the area of equity, where the dispersion caused by the pandemic has only accelerated the divide. Okay, whether it's in healthcare and access to healthcare, and who's being impacted the most because of the pandemic, to job losses and unemployment, who's being impacted most relative to those job losses. Business closures, the same thing, who's being impacted there. And really what the Great Dispersion has done in this decoupling and much more interface like what we're doing today is that most studies demonstrate that it causes a loss of community, it causes more tribalism. And so I think that's where Main Street can be so well positioned, because we're all about bringing community together and creating engagement. And so I think we have just an incredible opportunity across the equity spectrum of influencing and ensuring that whether it's in entrepreneurship or housing or whatever, that we're institutionalizing those efforts within the 4-point approach and the work that we do. So much of the resources that you're seeing and will see in the future coming out from the national office are really much targeting these 5 areas, and how do we address that within the work that we do. So at conference, as Daniel mentioned, see a lot more on ecosystem building, some new tools that we're bringing out, self-help guides in that area, to e-commerce tools. We have a wonderful partnership you'll be hearing about with a large tech based company here in the US, global in scale, very name recognition, where we're coming out with some new tools there. And we're also just seriously, concerned in trying to bring as much national funding to the local level as possible. This year, we just surpassed 3 million in direct grants to local communities, Main Street programs, and small businesses, our highest ever in 40 plus years of Main Street. And so we're really excited about the ability to leverage, this great brand of Main Street across the country, and leverage that for the support of coordinating programs and local programs. So again, I just want to thank you for having me here today to sort of help kick things off. And as a plug, as Daniel mentioned, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our own conference coming up April 12th through the 14th, which, for us, our very first virtual Main Street Now, which has its challenges as well, as I'm sure you're all familiar with, but we're really excited about the content. And what's very unique about this particular year, and again, the first time in our history as a movement and as a network, we're actually having a day dedicated to small business content for the small business owners. And that's very exciting for us, having a small business day. Again, you can find out more information at mainstreet.org about that. But we have some fantastic speakers, one that will be, I think, amazing for folks to hear about shortly, that we'll be releasing. And so, again, go to our website, you can check out more there. And then finally, I just want to say big thanks to not only the leadership at New Mexico Main Street, but all of you in the trenches working every day hard to, on resiliency issues, recovery issues. Our hope is that we can be there in support of you. And again, you guys are the ones making it happen. We learn from you. We try to bring that in the form of tools and blogs and everything else. But again, just a heartfelt thanks for all the great work. Keep it up. I know everyone's tired, but we're coming out of this. And I think there's just tremendous opportunities for Main Streets across the country, because I think we're in the best position to leverage some of these big changes and shifts that are occurring. And what we know is those that are the well-positioned will come out in the end. We've got strategy, we're well connected, and we've got the relationships, and we've got the approach and methodology and the history to back that up. So I feel very positive about where we're going, and I hope you do as well, and look forward to sharing more as we go forward. So have a wonderful conference. And again, thanks for having me here.
Great. Thanks, Matt. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and all the support that I think National's been providing, especially over the past year. And the funding that you talked about is super important, I think, just for not only state programs, but all our local communities. And I know, we were fortunate enough to have 3 of our communities get the National Park Service facade grant last year, and that's getting put to good use in our communities, and we look just forward to just the continued work going forward. So we really appreciate it.